Ambassador John Carter stood at the tall crystal podium in the center of the Galactic Assembly Hall. His face looked calm, but his hands were shaking with anger. Behind him on the massive wall screens were pictures of what used to be New Perth Colony. The human farming world that fed 17 different planets was now just smoking ruins and black ash. 300,000 humans had lived on New Perth. Men and women and children who grew food and raised families and dreamed of better days. Now they were all dead, burned alive when the Zephyrian war fleet decided the planet was in their way during what they called territorial negotiations. The assembly hall was huge and filled with aliens from over 200 different worlds. Some looked like giant insects with too many eyes. Others were floating jellyfish creatures that spoke through electronic boxes. The Eldari looked almost human, but with silver skin and no emotions on their faces. All of them sat in their fancy seats and acted like the death of New Perth was just another boring political problem to solve. High Counselor Vexthura of the Zephyrians stood at her own podium across the hall from Carter. Her people looked like tall blue lizards with sharp teeth and cold yellow eyes. She spoke in the flat tone that her species always used when they wanted to sound important and wise. The unfortunate incident at New Perth was a miscalculation during legitimate military operations, she said. The Zephyrian hegemony regrets the loss of life but cannot accept responsibility for human settlements placed in contested space without proper authorization from all involved parties. Carter felt his jaw clench tight. Contested space. That was what they called it when they wanted to steal something from someone weaker. New Perth had been a human world for 40 years. The colonists there had signed treaties and paid taxes and followed every stupid rule the assembly had made up. Captain Lisa Rodriguez sat in the gallery section reserved for human military officers. She wore the dark blue uniform of the Human Defense Fleet and had seen enough war to know when politicians were about to fail the people who trusted them. She watched Carter's knuckles turn white as he gripped the podium edges. The assembly has reviewed all evidence and testimony, announced Ancient Mortal of the Eldari. His people claimed to be the oldest civilization in the galaxy and acted like they knew everything about everything. We find that while the loss of New Perth is regrettable, the Zephyrian action was within acceptable parameters of interstellar law. No reparations will be awarded. No punitive measures will be taken. The human delegation is advised to accept this ruling and work toward better coordination with their neighbors in the future. The hall went quiet. 200 alien species watched Carter to see what the humans would do. Most of them expected him to bow his head and accept the decision, like humans always did. Humans were useful for building things and fixing machines and growing food, but they were not important enough to demand real justice when something bad happened to them. Carter reached into his jacket and pulled out the small golden badge that marked him as Earth's official representative to the Assembly. He had worn it for 15 years through wars and peace talks and trade disputes. He had believed that being part of the galactic community would make humanity safer and stronger. He placed the badge on the crystal podium with a soft click that somehow seemed loud in the silent hall. The Human Federation withdraws from the Galactic Assembly effective immediately, Carter said. His voice was calm, but it carried to every corner of the huge room. We will no longer participate in this mockery of justice. Ancient Mortal made a sound that might have been laughter if the Eldari knew how to laugh. You cannot simply leave, Ambassador Carter. Humanity depends on our trade routes and our technology and our protection. Without the Assembly, you are nothing but primitives playing with borrowed tools on the edge of civilized space. Carter looked up at the ancient alien and smiled. It was not a nice smile. It was the kind of smile a shark might make before it bit something. We will see about that, Carter said. Dr. Amanda Foster sat with the other human scientists in their section of the gallery. She was young for her position as head of Federation research, but she had earned her place by making discoveries that had helped humanity survive in a galaxy full of hostile neighbors. Next to her, Dr. Ryan Blake shifted nervously in his seat. "Do you think they know?" Blake whispered to Foster as Carter began walking toward the exit. About Project Exodus, Foster whispered back. No, they think we are too stupid to keep secrets. The human delegation stood up as one and followed Carter out of the assembly hall. Military officers and diplomats and scientists and trade representatives all walking together toward the exit. None of them looked back at the aliens who had just told them that human lives did not matter enough for justice as they walked. Captain Rodriguez felt a strange mix of fear and excitement. Fear because humanity was about to be alone in a dangerous galaxy. Excitement because they would finally be free to do what needed to be done without asking permission from aliens, who saw them as useful pets. The great doors of the assembly hall closed behind the last human with a deep booming sound. Inside the hall, 200 alien species sat in confused silence. They had just made the biggest mistake in galactic history, but they did not know it yet. On Earth and Mars and Luna, and a dozen other human worlds, encrypted messages began flowing between government buildings and military bases and research stations. Project Exodus was no longer a secret plan hidden in black sites and underground laboratories. It was time to show the galaxy what humans could really do when they stopped pretending to be civilized. 6 months after the humans walked out of the assembly hall, the galaxy began to understand what they had lost. Admiral K. Thompson stood on the bridge of the human flagship Defiance as it pulled away from the Kepler station orbital dock for the last time. Around her, dozens of other human ships were doing the same thing at ports and stations across known space. The recall order had gone out to every human vessel in the galaxy. Military ships and cargo haulers and passenger transports and research vessels all received the same message. Return to human space immediately, no exceptions. No delays. No questions asked. Thompson watched through the main viewer as the massive Kepler station grew smaller behind them. The station had been built mostly by human engineers and was maintained by human technicians. Without them, it would start falling apart within weeks. The alien administrators who ran the place were already sending desperate messages begging the humans to stay. Admiral, we are receiving another transmission from Station Commander Velther, reported Lieutenant Danny Walsh from the communications station. He is offering to double our maintenance contracts if we reconsider the withdrawal. Tell him to talk to the assembly about justice for New Perth, Thompson replied. If they want to change their minds about reparations, we might change our minds about leaving. She knew it was an empty offer. The humans were never coming back to this part of space. What was happening now was just the first phase of something much bigger. On the industrial world of Kepler 442b, Foreman Tony Martinez supervised the evacuation of the largest rare earth mining operation in the galaxy. The mines had been dug by human workers using human equipment to extract materials that 47 different alien civilizations needed for their technology. The local Vaxery governor was a thin purple creature named Hexmuth who had always treated the human workers with barely hidden contempt. Now he stood in Martinez's office, practically begging him to reconsider the evacuation. You must understand, Martinez, Hexmuth said in his whining voice. Without your people, our entire economy will collapse. My people do not know how to operate the deep core extractors. We do not understand the refining processes. Please be reasonable. Martinez looked at the governor and remembered all the times Hexmuth had referred to humans as useful animals. All the times he had cut safety budgets and increased work quotas and ignored complaints about dangerous conditions in the mines. Should have thought about that before you voted to ignore our murdered children, Martinez said. He activated a small device on his desk that uploaded a virus into every computer system in the mining complex. Within 72 hours, all the human-built machinery would shut down permanently and could never be restarted without the proper unlock codes, the codes that only humans knew. Similar scenes played out on hundreds of worlds throughout the galaxy. Dr. Helen Murphy had spent 20 years developing new farming techniques that could grow food in alien soil under foreign suns. Her quantum agriculture methods had ended famine on dozens of worlds and made her famous throughout known space. Now, she stood in her laboratory on Vega Prime deleting every file and formula and research note she had ever created. The universal databases that stored scientific Knowledge for all galactic civilizations would lose decades of advancement in agriculture and food production. "Doctor, please," begged her Aquiline research partner Silenina. "This knowledge could save billions of lives. You cannot simply destroy it out of spite." "Watch me," Murphy said as she initiated the final deletion sequence. "Maybe next time your people will think twice before deciding that human lives do not matter." Engineer Carlos Vega had built fusion reactors for the Centauri mining consortium that powered their operations across 12 star systems. The reactors were marvels of human engineering that produced more energy than anything the aliens had ever created. They were also designed with built-in safeguards that only human technicians understood. Vega stood in the main reactor control room on Centauri Prime and began overriding those safeguards one by one. He was not trying to cause explosions or kill anyone. He was just making sure that when the reactors eventually needed maintenance, no alien engineer would be able to fix them without human help that would never come. The emergency session of the Galactic Assembly was chaos like nothing anyone had ever seen. Representatives from dozens of species stood up to report the same problems: critical systems failing, economies collapsing, infrastructure breaking down without human expertise to maintain it. The Korath were a warrior species that had conquered half their sector through military might. Their representative General Vekver stood at his podium and spoke with the arrogance his people were known for throughout the galaxy. "Let the humans run back to their little corner of space," he said. "We survived before they came, and we will survive after they leave. The Korath do not need primitives to maintain our civilization." But other species were not so confident. Ambassador Silvera of the Aquelan Federation had been studying human activities for months, and what she had discovered worried her greatly. Her people were natural telepaths who could sense emotions and intentions from other species. What she sensed from humans before they left was not defeat or sadness. It was anticipation. "They are not running away," she warned the assembly. "They are preparing for something. My people have detected unusual energy signatures from human space, massive construction projects, military buildup on a scale we have never seen. The humans are not retreating. They are getting ready." Most of the assembly dismissed her warnings. Humans were useful servants, but they were not warriors or conquerors. They did not have the advanced technology or military traditions of the older galactic civilizations. What could they possibly be preparing for that would threaten species that had ruled space for thousands of years? In human space. The answer to that question was taking shape in shipyards and laboratories and training facilities across dozens of worlds. The withdrawal from galactic society had been carefully planned to give humanity time to complete projects that had been decades in the making, projects that would change everything. Admiral Thompson arrived at Luna Base to find construction crews working around the clock on vessels unlike anything in the galaxy. The new ships were smaller than traditional alien dreadnoughts, but they moved with impossible grace and seemed to bend light around their hulls in ways that made them hard to look at directly. "How many are ready for deployment?" she asked General Patricia Hayes, who was overseeing the construction from the command center. 50 so far, with more coming online every day," Hayes replied. "The new manufacturing systems are working better than our best estimates. We should have a full fleet ready within months." Thompson nodded. The aliens thought humans were leaving because they were weak and dependent. They had no idea that humanity had been preparing for this moment since the day they first joined the galactic community. Soon they would understand their mistake. While the galaxy struggled with broken machines and failing systems, humanity was building something that would change the balance of power forever. General Patricia Hayes stood in the command center deep beneath the surface of Luna, watching holographic displays that showed the greatest military buildup in human history. For 30 years, while humans had played nice with the galactic community, they had also been working on secret projects in hidden facilities scattered across their worlds. Projects that would have violated dozens of assembly laws if anyone had known about them. Technologies that the older alien civilizations thought were impossible or too dangerous to develop. Now, those projects were finally ready to be revealed. Dr. Amanda Foster walked through the enhancement laboratory on Europa, where the future of human warfare was being created. The room was filled with medical pods that looked like metal coffins with transparent lids. Inside each pod was a volunteer from the human military who had agreed to become something more than human. Captain Jake Sullivan had been one of the first to volunteer for the Neural Interface program. He had been a good soldier before, but now, as he stepped out of his enhancement pod, he was something else entirely. His eyes glowed with a soft blue light that showed the quantum processors now integrated directly into his brain. "How do you feel, Captain?" Foster asked, as Sullivan ran through a series of movement tests that would have been impossible for any normal human to complete. "Like I can see everything," Sullivan replied. His voice sounded the same, but there was something different about the way he spoke. More precise, more aware. "I can process tactical information faster than any computer we used to have. I can predict enemy movements before they make them. And according to the medical scans, my cellular regeneration rate means I will live for centuries instead of decades." Foster nodded and made notes on her tablet. The enhancement process had worked even better than they had hoped. Humans could now match or exceed the natural abilities of any alien species in the galaxy. But more than that, they could do things that no alien species had ever imagined possible. In shipyards throughout human space, construction crews worked day and night to build vessels that looked nothing like traditional galactic warships. The new human Defense Force ships were sleek and dark and seemed to absorb light rather than reflect it. They were smaller than the massive dreadnoughts that alien fleets used, but they were also faster and more maneuverable and packed with technology that made size irrelevant. Engineer Sarah Kim stood on the bridge of the first completed vessel watching technicians install the final systems. The ship was called Freedom, and it would be the prototype for the entire new human fleet. Its quantum armor could phase through most energy weapons. Its weapons could target enemies through hyperspace itself. Most importantly, its automated manufacturing systems could build new ships in hours instead of years. "All systems show green," reported Lieutenant Ben Clark from the engineering station. "The zero-point energy core is stable. Quantum tunneling weapons are online. Reality anchor deployment system is ready for testing." Kim smiled. The aliens thought they understood the laws of physics, but humans had learned to break those laws when necessary. They could now manipulate matter and energy and space and time in ways that would seem like magic to the older civilizations on the training facility orbiting Jupiter. Colonel Barry Stone watched as enhanced human soldiers practiced combat techniques that no alien military had ever encountered. The soldiers moved with inhuman speed and precision. They could survive in any environment, from the frozen vacuum of space to the crushing depths of gas giant atmospheres. Most importantly, they were no longer limited by the fear of death. The consciousness transfer technology meant that if a soldier was killed in battle, their mind could be downloaded into a new enhanced body within minutes. True immortality through science rather than religion or philosophy. "Squad 7 advance on the target," Stone commanded as he watched the training exercise unfold. The soldiers moved like ghosts through the simulated alien city using stealth technology that made them invisible to every known form of detection. When they reached their target, they deployed weapons that could disintegrate matter at the molecular level. The exercise was over in seconds. 600 simulated alien defenders eliminated without a single human casualty. Stone had fought in enough real wars to know that training simulations were never as difficult as actual combat, but he also knew that these enhanced soldiers were so far beyond normal human capabilities that they might as well be a different species entirely. When the time came to reveal their existence to the galaxy, the shock would be devastating. In the research stations hidden throughout the asteroid belt, human scientists worked on projects that would have been considered impossible just decades earlier. Dr. Ryan Blake led a team that had finally cracked the secrets of quantum manipulation on a large scale. They could now create fields that locked portions of spacetime into predetermined configurations. "The reality anchors are working perfectly," Blake reported to Foster during their weekly progress meeting. We can trap enemy ships in bubbles of compressed space where the normal laws of physics do not apply. We can make their weapons useless by changing how energy behaves in their local area. We can even alter the flow of time around specific targets. Foster studied the test results with excitement and concern. The technology they were developing was so advanced that it represented a fundamental shift in how war would be fought. Humans would no longer need to match alien civilizations in numbers or firepower. They could simply change the rules of reality in their favor. President Nancy Williams received daily briefings on the progress of what had become known as Project Exodus. The name was perfect because humanity was preparing to leave behind everything they had been and become something entirely new, something that could stand against the combined might of the galaxy if necessary. How long until we are ready for full deployment? Williams asked during the latest security meeting. General Hayes checked her notes before responding. The first wave of enhanced ships and soldiers will be ready within 3 months. Full fleet deployment within 6 months. Complete infrastructure transformation within a year. When we are finished, the Human Federation will be militarily superior to any combination of alien forces the galaxy can assemble. Williams nodded. She had not wanted this outcome when humans first joined the galactic community. She had hoped that cooperation and diplomacy would be enough to secure humanity's place among the stars. But the Assembly's response to New Perth had made it clear that humans would never be treated as equals in the current system. So they would create a new system where equality was irrelevant, because humans would be so far above everyone else that the question would never arise again. Reports from the galaxy indicated that some alien civilizations were beginning to suspect that humanity was planning something significant. The Aquilon Federation had detected unusual energy signatures from human space. The Zephyrian hegemony had tried to send spy probes into the Sol system only to have them disappear without explanation, but none of them understood what was really happening. They thought in terms of traditional military buildup with bigger ships and more weapons. They could not imagine that humans had transcended those limitations entirely. Soon they would learn the truth, and when they did, the galaxy would never be the same. The first sign that something had changed came when the most advanced surveillance probe in galactic history simply vanished. The Assembly had sent their best technology to monitor human space and discover what the humans were building in secret. The probe was equipped with quantum sensors that could detect energy signatures from across star systems and stealth systems that made it invisible to every known form of detection. One moment it was transmitting data from the edge of the Sol system. The next moment it was gone. Not destroyed or damaged or disabled. Gone, erased from existence so completely that even its quantum signature disappeared from the universe. Commander Paul Davis watched the probe's approach from his position aboard the Earth defense platform. His body had been enhanced with the latest human augmentations, and his mind was connected to quantum computers that processed information faster than any alien civilization could imagine. The probe never had a chance to complete its mission. Davis activated the quantum dissolution beam with a thought. The weapon reached across space and unmade the alien probe at the subatomic level. Matter became energy, became nothing. The technology would have been considered impossible by galactic science, but humans had moved beyond what was possible into what was necessary. Target eliminated, Davis reported to Admiral Thompson, who was coordinating Earth's defenses from the command center on Luna. No trace remains. The aliens will never know what happened to their spy probe. Thompson nodded with satisfaction. The dissolution technology was just one of dozens of new weapons that humanity had developed during their withdrawal from galactic society. Soon the aliens would discover that humans had not been hiding in fear, but preparing for war on a scale that no civilization had ever imagined. The Assembly's response was swift and predictable. An emergency session was called to address what they called the human problem. Representatives from the galaxy's most powerful military forces gathered to discuss how to deal with a species that had become increasingly isolated and unpredictable. Admiral Kethmer of the Hegemon Navy stood before the Assembly. and spoke with the confidence of someone who had never lost a battle in 3 centuries of warfare. His flagship alone carried enough firepower to destroy entire star systems, and his fleet had conquered civilizations that had ruled space for millennia. "The humans are clearly developing weapons in violation of assembly law," he declared. "They destroyed our surveillance probe using unknown technology and refused to allow inspections of their territory. This cannot be tolerated. I propose that a joint military force be sent to human space to demand compliance with galactic regulations." The motion was approved by overwhelming majority. 12 species contributed their most advanced warships to create a fleet that represented the combined military might of half the galaxy. Over 300 vessels equipped with weapons that could crack planets and shields that had never been penetrated by enemy fire. The fleet assembled at the edge of human space and prepared to teach humanity a lesson about respecting their betters. In the galactic hierarchy, Admiral Kethmer commanded from his flagship a massive dreadnought called Eternal Victory that was larger than most human cities and had never been damaged in battle. They found a single human ship waiting for them. The vessel was small and sleek and apparently unarmed. It looked more like a pleasure craft than a military ship. The alien commanders studied it through their sensors and found no weapons signatures or defensive systems or any indication that it posed a threat to their massive fleet. Captain Amy Chen stood on the bridge of the human ship Swift Justice and looked at the alien armada through her enhanced eyes. Her body had been modified with the latest combat augmentations, and her mind was connected to quantum tactical computers that could analyze thousands of battle scenarios simultaneously. She activated the communication system and broadcast a message to the alien fleet. Her voice was calm and professional, but carried an undertone of absolute authority that made several alien commanders feel uncomfortable without understanding why. "You have entered human space without permission," she said. "You have 30 seconds to reverse course and return to assembly territory." "This is your only warning." Admiral Kethmer's response was exactly what Chun had expected. His species had ruled their sector of space for thousands of years and had never been challenged by inferior civilizations. The idea that a single human ship could threaten his mighty fleet was so absurd that he actually laughed. "One primitive vessel against the combined might of 12 fleets," he broadcast back. "Humans were always delusional, but this exceeds even our worst estimates of your stupidity. Surrender immediately, or we will demonstrate why the older civilizations rule the galaxy." Chun smiled. It was not a pleasant expression. "You should have taken the warning." The battle lasted exactly 17 seconds. The human ship did not fire CONVN, IONAL weapons or launch missiles or deploy any technology that the aliens recognized as military hardware. Instead, Captain Chun activated what humanity called reality anchors, devices that could lock portions of spacetime into predetermined configurations and rewrite the laws of physics in localized areas. The alien ships found themselves trapped in bubbles of compressed space where movement became impossible and weapons could not function. Their shields flickered and died as the energy fields that powered them were redirected into dimensions that did not exist in normal space. Life support systems failed as the chemical reactions that sustained them were prevented by alterations to molecular structure. Admiral Kethmer watched in horror as his mighty fleet became helpless in seconds. His flagship that had never been damaged now could not even move or communicate with the other vessels. The weapons that could destroy planets were as useless as toys in the altered space around them. Captain Chun's final transmission was broadcast, not just to the trapped fleet, but to monitoring stations throughout the galaxy. Every major civilization would hear her words and understand that the balance of power had shifted permanently. "Humanity is no longer bound by your rules or your laws or your limitations," she said. "We have transcended the constraints that define your existence. Stay away from our space, or you will discover what evolution beyond your comprehension looks like in practice." The human ship vanished from sensors as if it had never existed. The alien fleet remained trapped in their reality bubbles for 6 hours before the effect wore off and they could move again. By then, the message had reached every corner of known space. humanity had revealed their true capabilities and the galaxy would never be the same. Emergency sessions were called in the capitals of every major civilization. Military leaders who had never known defeat tried to understand how their most advanced weapons had been rendered useless by technology that seemed to violate fundamental laws of physics. The Eldari Ancient Council met in secret session to discuss what they had witnessed. These beings had observed the rise and fall of countless civilizations over millions of years, but they had never seen anything like what the humans had demonstrated. They have broken the barriers that limit all other life in the universe, Ancient Mortal reported with something approaching fear in his normally emotionless voice. They are no longer bound by the physical laws that govern our reality. They have become something beyond our ability to classify or control. Similar conversations took place in the ruling chambers of species throughout the galaxy. The humans were no longer the useful servants who built machines and grew food and maintained infrastructure. They had become something else entirely. Something that made the ancient fears of galactic civilizations seem suddenly very reasonable. In human space, the reaction to the successful test was celebration mixed with grim satisfaction. They had proven that their new technologies worked perfectly against the best that galactic civilization could deploy against them. Now it was time for the next phase of their plan, the phase that would change everything forever. The months following what became known throughout the galaxy as the 32nd War brought changes that no civilization had expected or prepared for. Species that had dominated interstellar politics for thousands of years now lived in constant fear of what humanity might do next. Every alien leader understood that the balance of power had shifted so completely that their traditional ways of thinking about war and diplomacy were now meaningless. President Nancy Williams stood in the newly constructed Earth Command Center watching holographic displays that showed human activity across dozens of star systems. The massive facility had been built deep beneath the Rocky Mountains and contained technology that would have seemed impossible just years earlier. From here, humanity could monitor and influence events anywhere in the galaxy. Report on Galactic. Response to our demonstration, Williams requested from General Hayes, who was coordinating intelligence gathering from the command stations surrounding them. Complete panic, Hayes replied with satisfaction. 17 major civilizations have upgraded their military alert status to maximum. The Assembly has authorized emergency defense spending that exceeds their total budgets for the past century. 3 species have actually begun evacuation procedures for their border worlds closest to human space. Williams nodded. Here was exactly the response they had wanted to create. For too long, humanity had been treated as junior partners in galactic civilization. Useful for manual labor and technical expertise, but never important enough to have their voices heard when critical decisions were made. The destruction of New Perth had proven that human lives were considered expendable by the galactic community. Now that community was learning what happened when they pushed a species too far. The evidence of human advancement was undeniable and terrifying. Reports flowed in from across the galaxy describing technologies that violated every known law of physics, human ships that could travel instantaneously between any 2 points in space, human weapons that could manipulate matter and energy at the quantum level, human defensive systems that could alter the flow of time itself. Most frightening of all were reports about human immortality. Intelligence agents from multiple civilizations had confirmed that humans had achieved true consciousness transfer technology. Their enhanced soldiers could not be permanently killed because their minds could be downloaded into new bodies within minutes of death. Dr. Amanda Foster reviewed the latest enhancement protocols in her laboratory on Europa. The facility had grown from a small research station into a massive complex that processed hundreds of volunteers every day. Each human who underwent the enhancement process emerged as something that transcended the limitations of biological life. How many have been processed so far? Foster asked her assistant Dr. Blake as they watched the latest group of enhanced humans complete their activation procedures. Over 50,000 military personnel and another 20,000 civilians, Blake reported. The demand is so high that we have had to expand operations to 12 other facilities throughout the system. Everyone wants to become part of the new humanity. Foster understood the appeal. The enhanced humans were stronger and faster and more intelligent than any baseline human had ever been. They could survive in environments that would kill normal people instantly. They could process information at superhuman speeds and make decisions with perfect logical precision, but more than that, they were no longer alone in the universe. The neural interfaces connected each enhanced human to a quantum network that shared knowledge and experience across the entire enhanced population. They had become a collective intelligence that could think and act as one when necessary. Ambassador John Carter had also undergone the enhancement process and now served as humanity's final representative to the galactic community. His appearance had not changed significantly, but his mind was connected to quantum computers. That gave him access to all human knowledge and tactical analysis in real time. He stood once again in the assembly hall where he had walked out months earlier, but now he was there to deliver a very different kind of message. The alien representatives watched him with a mixture of fear and desperate hope. Fear of what humanity had become and hope that some kind of accommodation could still be reached. Members of the assembly, Carter began in a voice that carried perfect authority and confidence. The Human Federation wishes to inform you of certain changes in our status and capabilities that affect our relationship with galactic civilization. The hall was completely silent. Over 200 species held their collective breath, waiting to hear whether humanity would use their new power to conquer or destroy the civilizations that had dismissed them for so long. We have transcended the limitations that bound us when we first joined this community, Carter continued. We are no longer dependent on your trade routes or your technology or your protection. We have achieved mastery over matter and energy, and space and time itself. We have become immortal through science rather than hope. We have evolved beyond the constraints that define your existence. Ancient mortal of the Eldari spoke with barely controlled terror in his usually emotionless voice. What do you intend to do with these capabilities, Ambassador Carter? Will you use them to rule over the species you now consider inferior? Carter looked at the ancient being and smiled. It was not a cruel smile, but it was not reassuring either. It was the smile of someone who held absolute power and was deciding how to use it. We could conquer you, he said simply. We could rule you. We could reshape this galaxy according to our vision, and there is nothing you could do to stop us. Your most advanced weapons are useless against our technology. Your greatest fleets are helpless against our reality manipulation systems. Your ancient civilizations are children playing with toys compared to what we have become. The silence in the hall was absolute. Every delegate understood that they were hearing the truth from someone who had the power to enforce any decision he made. But we will not, Carter continued. We are not you. We have not forgotten what it feels like to be dismissed and ignored and treated as expendable. We will not become the monsters that created us through your indifference to justice. Relief flowed through the hall like a physical wave. Dozens of species that had been preparing for conquest or enslavement suddenly dared to hope that they might survive humanity's ascension. Instead, we will leave, Carter announced. The Human Federation is departing this galaxy entirely. Our ships are already preparing for the journey to Andromeda, where we will build a new civilization free from the political structures and moral failures that define this community. The shock was even greater than the relief had been. Humanity was not going to conquer the galaxy. They were going to abandon it entirely and leave the existing civilizations to continue their petty wars and power struggles without human involvement. But remember this moment, Carter added as he prepared to leave the assembly hall for the final time. Remember what happened when you pushed too far. Remember what became of the species you dismissed as primitive servants. And when you encounter other younger civilizations in the future, remember that dismissing them as unimportant might create something you cannot control or defeat or negotiate with. As Carter walked toward the exit, the assembly delegates sat in stunned silence. They had been granted mercy by beings who had every reason to destroy them. Humanity had chosen to leave rather than rule, but their departure would create a power vacuum that would destabilize galactic politics for centuries. In human space, the Great Exodus was already beginning. Massive ships unlike anything ever built were departing for the void between galaxies, carrying millions of enhanced humans toward their new home. Behind them, they left monitoring stations and automated defense systems that would ensure no alien civilization ever tried to follow them. The galaxy watched the human ships disappear into the darkness between stars and knew that they were witnessing the end of an era. The species that had seemed so primitive and dependent had revealed themselves to be gods in disguise. Now those gods were leaving to build something greater than anything the galaxy had ever imagined, and in the depths of space, human explorers began their journey toward Andromeda, knowing that they carried with them the future of intelligence in the universe. They had walked out of the galactic community as servants and emerged as the inheritors of infinity itself. The age of human dominance had begun not through conquest but through transcendence.